Well, we moved to Hopkins in 1927, which was just before the beginning of the Depression, And we moved to a farm, and we raised everything, absolutely everything, from radishes to raspberries. And Dad was really a good farmer, and he didn't. We went into the roadside market business, selling produce at the roadside market. But he started out with a pail of radishes. And that went so well that he ultimately built a little kind of a platform, and then he built an actual building.
Well, yeah, I was in a little different situation. My dad was a professional army man, so we weren't directly affected right away.
We held on, and actually were well off because we had plenty of food. Dad was a very good provider. He'd always raise a turkey and some pigs. We'd butcher hogs and freeze them in the rain barrel.
We lived in an unusual situation. We lived in a town that was never bombed. It was Oxford. Rumors went, which people always love conspiracies, that the Germans and the British had a pact that if they didn't bomb Bonn, they wouldn't. If we didn't, then they would not bomb Oxford. But I don't believe that. My relatives, all our relatives lived in Bristol, which is on the west of Oxford, and that town was bombed just absolutely terribly. The central town was flattened. And we had a lot of relatives there, and they all came and lived with us, which as for a teenager was probably a little worse than being bombed.
Well, actually, I was chasing the station at an airfield called Kingston Bagpules, just outside of Oxford. And they used to have dances at the town hall. The local citizens thought it would be a good idea to entertain the soldiers, So young ladies from the various schools would come there. Sheila went to a very, very good finishing school, and my friend Don Shade had met her friend Mercia, and then I guess to unload me, they introduced me to Sheila, and we got along just famously, She quoted Shakespeare. She's always been able to do that.
I went to a dance in the Oxford Town Hall with my girlfriend Mercia, who now lives in Australia. And Paul's friend came up, asked Mercia to dance, and then I think he wanted to get rid of the extra woman, so he dragged Paul over and introduced us, and that was the beginning. I think this is the way it went. It was just before he was going to be shipped off to France, and we met, and we had a date, and we didn't do much. We were just walking, and then he did ask me. Yeah. Because who knows, in those days, we always had that sense of urgency. You didn't know whether you'd ever see people again, of course.
So I ultimately wound up in Detmold, Germany. And it was really interesting because she had applied for all the bookwork it took to get the marriage license permit, and I got a pass to England and was able to fly from Detmold to Villers-Coublay in Paris, where we had our own plane in our squadron, and we were getting short of gas, and the MPs came up with a sign on their Jeep saying, "Follow me," and the pilot knew that meant that officers wanted to take over the plane. They wanted to go to London for a lark, So he just took off right over the top of the Jeep. And we landed there to get gas, but we just barely made it across the channel and landed at an airfield, Camberley, in southern England. And there I took the train and ultimately wound up in Oxford, and Sheila and I got married at the registry office.
Well, I was young, very young. I probably would never do it now, the thought of leaving everybody. And I didn't think as deeply about it as I should have done. I think you're much more superficial when you're young. And the one thing that struck me this one little incident that really made me think was that when we were getting on the ship to go, this one girl said to me, "Was that your father in uniform?" My dad was. I said, "Yes." She said, "He looked as though he was crying." And you know, that struck me. Why would he cry? Can you imagine being that unfeeling? And then it really hit me that it was a sad occasion. And as far as a place I thought that was just an adventure at that age. I was only 19.
Well, she was still in England. After we got married, we didn't see each other for a year. So in the meantime, I'd built this basement house. And when she came here, it was just partially finished. We had a chemical toilet in a little plywood closet. Remember that?
Yes, I remember.
And we had a parlor heater with the leg broken off.
And there were bricks underneath.
Yeah, brick underneath it, yeah. Yeah, it was pretty crude, you know.
No running water. Yeah, people used to build those basement houses after them. I think mostly they were returning veterans, weren't they?
Yeah, well, there was no new housing. It hadn't been built, nothing been built really since the crash, you know, in 1929. So it was a little
It's
tough
funny
sledding,
when you think of the houses you've built since.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
Well, Mike was born in 1947 in March. That's our oldest son. He turned 60 last year.
He probably would have been born a year earlier if we hadn't been separated for a year.
Of course. Then we had Jerry 20 months later.
Yeah.
Those two boys were fun. They've been a great joy to us.
And the 4 girls, of course.
And then 4 girls. We feel we're very lucky with our kids.
Oh, we really are, yeah.
We're getting into the last stages, I guess, of our lives and our married life, aren't we?
Yeah, well, we've been married 62 years.
Yeah, we're becoming the elderly members of the family.
And the trouble is, we're the only surviving members
we're
of
left,
our family.
both of
Both
us.
Sides,
both of us are the last members of our immediate family, which is hard to realize. And I realize that there's nobody that I can say to them, "Do you remember when?" Because they're not around anymore, which is hard. I would have been much kinder to elderly people if I'd have gone through getting old myself. You know, you don't appreciate how it is. So but I really am thankful for my family. I can't feel for our kids. Because when we see people who have no children, when they get old or they get sick, or how miserably lonely they are.
Yeah.
So we're very happy with our family.